Good morning, everyone, and happy Dad's Day. And I'm Dave Cable. Okay, you can call me the Cable Guy. A lot of people have in the past. Um, when I was substitute teaching, I had to tell this story real quick. Middle school kid kept calling me that. Finally sent him down to the office. They sent him home for 3 or 4 days, whatever. But anyways, I'm up here because I'm somebody's son and I'm somebody's dad. Let me tell you about my dad. My dad was one of those members of the greatest generation, World War II. He was a super dad, always there for you. We, spent time together talking about stuff. I lost him at age 12. When the door, the police chaplain from police department knocked on the door and said, "We found John Cable slumped over the wheel, died of a heart attack." And I'm not asking for anybody's sympathy. I'm just up here saying, hey, thanks, Dad, for helping me along all through my life as I raised my son. My son's name is John. Yes, he was named after my father and father-in-law. John has autism. And if I had listened to the predictions of all the teachers and medical community, he wasn't supposed to have a good life. I want to tell you that John is able to work outside of the home. He works for Planet Fitness. And what's really cool is that he invited me today to join him. He made the reservations, and he said he's going to pay for it too, for Father's Day lunch, and that's pretty cool. So, getting back to my dad, it's pretty neat how life is. I'll be the first to tell you, I have dealt with depression throughout my life, be it mild, and I thank the garden because so many Father's Days I would sit up there. I've been coming here since '98, off and on, and by now I would be sad, I'd be crying, whatever. The garden has helped me along the way. I feel it in my heart. I relied on Dr. Laura, Dr. Phil, and the guy who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women from Venus. We all know him. John Gray. Yeah, John Gray. And, the other day I was thinking, well, I'll bring some props along. Couldn't find those books. Got an empty bag instead. I put all that stuff over the years out to the street. And I hope if you know somebody in your life, or maybe you, that maybe you can help them along as well. So, in closing, I'd like to thank Carolyn. I'd like to thank Dad. And I look forward to many more years of being a dad to my son, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Studies show that our image of God is often reflective of our image of our own fathers in life. So, for example, if you had a father that was judgmental or punishing, then oftentimes you will take that image and put that image onto God. For me, God is a beer-drinking guy who works on other people's cars and opens his house to all people, is very, very hospitable. And for me, that's a beautiful image of God, having a cold one waiting for me, or no, we'll see. But so it's interesting to me, as you come here today, be mindful of how your image of God has been shaped. In part, it's shaped by Jesus, because Jesus referred to God as Father on a regular basis. Abba, Father, Papa, Dad. And it was a strong part of imagery for him. On this day, we're going to take a look at a text from John where Jesus talks to Philip about seeing God in him, about looking like God. So Philip asked him, wait a minute, we haven't seen God yet, and this is Jesus' response. Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me, that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. But if you do not, then believe me because of the works themselves. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If in my name you ask me for anything, I will do it. So for me, that's kind of an image of Jesus saying, so God, my dad, is in me, and now I'm sharing that love in you, and you are the next generation and the next generation, and here we are some 2,000 years later, the next generation. Again, we may not all be fathers in the traditional sense, but we can all be dads. In 1910, Sonora Smart Dodd went to a Mother's Day event at her church, and she heard a Mother's Day sermon, and she thought it was really wonderful. But see, her experience in life had been different. Her mother died in childbirth, and her and her 5 siblings were raised by their father. The only love of a parent she knew was that love of her father. And just as we had a day for honoring mothers, Sonora wanted a day to honor her father. Now, what's interesting to me is the Mother's Day was already established pretty well and moving along, but Sonora had a little more difficult time. Do you know it was not until Richard Nixon in 1972, Sonora was 1910, 1972 went ahead and made it a federal holiday, the third Sunday in June, that Father's Day became a nationally recognized event. Some 60 plus years it took for that to happen. Jimmy Fallon recognizes that challenge when he said, a survey found that the average person will spend $162 on their mom for Mother's Day and about 10 seconds in their junk drawer finding a gift for Father's Day. It's true, Father's Day is a little different, isn't it? I mean, Mother's Day is, we gotta get ready for Mother's Day. And lots of us are like, oh, gee, Father's Day. Right? It's different. It feels different. It's a different experience. And I don't know if that's because of the history or what, of it taking so long to get it claimed as a national holiday. Or maybe it's because the role of fathers throughout history has been a little difficult in and of itself. I am so glad that Jesus referred to God as Father, because the fathers of the Bible needed a little bit of help. I mean, remember Abraham? What do we remember him for? Taking his son off to be sacrificed. That was his role as the father. Of course, we know if you read the story, it all turns out okay. Then there was Lot, who offers up his daughters to an angry mob. Jesus came and redeemed the role of fathers in the Bible, and I am so very thankful for that because we needed it. And perhaps that's why the role of father has been something we've struggled with throughout history. For the longest time, fathers had a particular task in life, didn't they? They made the money, they went out, they didn't stay home. I think of the father knows best era. Do you think about that era? Where the role of father was wait till your father gets home. He was the punisher. He was the bread earner. He was the guy who only talked to his kids when there was a problem. I'm happy to report that the role of father in today's world is quite a bit different, isn't it? I mean, fathers stay at home now and raise their kids equally as their mothers. Fathers Dads raise kids on their own. Dads are just as valued as mothers in today's world. And I believe that the world is indeed starting to reflect that reality in one way and another. This past week, I heard of a study by UCLA professor Jora Leap. She was studying the area of Watts, which is an area of LA. If you recall, Watts was an area that actually first developed in the 1930s with African American families. And it was an area known for not having a lot of resources, but having a lot of spirit. It's a community that rolled along until the Civil Rights Movement, and in 1965 it became one of the most dangerous places around. In fact, people were killed in riots, both police and both civilians. Since that time, Watts has had a very difficult time with recovery, and oftentimes the publicity that Watts gets is not very good. But this professor found that there actually is very, very good things going on in Watts. There's a program called Project Fatherhood, which she has since written a book about. It's a story of courage and healing in one of America's toughest communities. Now, this is a community that continues to be challenged. There are no chain grocery stores. There are no restaurants like we have in our world around here. It continues to be a very challenged area. And Mike Cummings and a number of other men recognized how difficult the young men in the community, the time that they were having. So they decided to focus in on the role of being a father for these young men. And they created a safe place for these young men to participate in community. Big Mike says this: "It takes a village to raise a child, and I believe Project Fatherhood is that village." It's a safe place where these young men meet once a week with these men, and you know, some of these men are not fathers themselves, nor did they ever know their fathers. But they know what it means to love somebody else and for that other person to experience the power of love. The community sees the difference in the children and the children's relationship with their fathers, just because they agreed to be a dad and to share some kind of dad energy. So on this Father's Day, I want to encourage all of us, void of our gender, to consider how we might be good dads in the world today. There are a variety of different steps that we can take to be good dads that will show that we are strong, that we have what it takes to love God's children. The very first step is to impress your children by loving God, to impress all children by loving God. It's central to our faith. It's central to the Jewish faith. It's central to most faiths, that we're called to live the Shema, and that is to love our God with all our heart, our soul, and our strength. Strength in loving God. That's a pretty powerful image. So the best way to be a father, or a dad, is to love God. The next step in being a good dad is to walk by faith. And one who walks by faith has to be willing to be vulnerable. When you walk by faith, you recognize that you do not know what tomorrow holds, but you know who holds you into tomorrow, and that's the God that you love so much. To walk in faith is to be vulnerable, is to admit that you don't have all the answers, is to admit that you don't know what tomorrow brings, but if you live in love and love all of God's children, then I believe that God will take care of all of us. The third step to being a good parent and loving is this thing called forgiveness. If we're going to be good dads, we need to live into the power of this thing called forgiveness. We need to seek it, and we need to give it. We need to seek it, and we need to give it. Even when you are right, you need to seek forgiveness, because you can be right and be all in your own, or you can be loved. This living into forgiveness is not as easy in today's world as perhaps it may have been in the past. We like to show we're strong, that we have the answers, and I am right and you are wrong. I experience this most in my automobile. I know this is not I feel like I'm at a support group for people who are poor drivers. But for me, it's really where it lives. There are times when I am driving my car where people make some really poor choices. And I choose to be really angry with them, or I choose to forgive them in the midst of the poor choices they've made. Now, I have to admit that perhaps the other day I was on 70 Sunday and I saw it said, gonna go down to one lane, but I was running a little bit late. And I did that thing. I am that person. Yes, drove way ahead. While the other guys told me I was number one, drove way ahead and got ahead in the line. Today I am asking God to somehow make my words known to all those people who I blew off because I need their forgiveness because of some choices that I have made in my selfishness. That's what living in the power of forgiveness looks like. I think we make it really hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. We have to live a life in such a way that our children witness us, saying, I am sorry. I am sorry. I'm so sorry. And then when your child does something wrong and tries to run around it, and by the way, children can be up to 50, 60, whatever it is, then you patiently sit there and wait to offer and gift forgiveness. Wouldn't it be amazing if we started living our lives in this way? We lived in the power of forgiveness. I love how Mahatma Gandhi puts it. He says, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. I want to be a strong dad who lives in the power of forgiveness. That's the dad that I want to be. Finally, I believe that the best point to being a good dad is living in joy. Living in the power of joy. And to be mindful of what memories we are making on a daily basis. Today I speak to grandparents. I am a grandparent. And I speak to grandparents who have lived life and raised their own children and have had their own life experiences and now know life on the other side of the challenge of raising a family. They now know life on the other side of working hard every day and making sure you're working your way to retirement. For us, it's more important than ever to live in the power of joy. To love our children joyfully as they are now dealing with the same challenges with their children that you dealt with them. I think the greatest gift a grandparent can give is to live joyfully and lovingly. I'm Facebook friends with many of you, and nothing brings me greater joy than to see you on Facebook with these babies and with your kids and with everybody. Those are memory-making moments. That's why you put them on Facebook. Those are the kind of memories that we need to be responsible for because we have the luxury of not having to worry about their education and all of those things. We have the luxury to live in love and to create loving, joy-filled memories. Let me introduce you to 4 generations of the Holmes men. Stuart Holmes, the little guy up front, is Andrew's father. He was a Methodist minister the whole of his career. He has since stepped down. Central to Stuart's way of being was caring for people, creating fun movie experiences for kids. The kids did movies even long before the garden was ever even thought of. He created movies for the kids in his congregation where they did the Good Samaritan and a variety of all different things. He then took that love and passed it on to his son, Andrew Holmes, who just happens to be my husband, who also went into a life of working on movies for a long time and working for the BBC and doing a variety of different things and loving people that way until he could no longer stand it and God called him to be a minister because he loves and cares for people. He still gets a little bit of that fun with technology in. Then David, his son, has become a physical therapist. They're called physios in England. And guess what he does? He lives his life caring for people. Something tells me that the little guy in Andrew's arms, Matthew, doesn't have a chance in not caring for others. See, it's a generational thing. And what we're putting out there is going to go on and on and on. What if we put out there loving God? What if we put out there walking in faith? What if we put out there seeking and giving forgiveness? What if we put out there living in joy? What will happen to generation after generation after generation? I can't wait and see. Happy Father's Day to you and you and you. Happy Dad's Day to all. Amen.